Anyone could walk at the cemetery and look at the writing on the graves and assume whatever they need to about the person who is buried in there.
Warrnambool's war history really is something to behold, and Doug Heazlewood knows it better than most.
The World War I soldiers' files are very revealing. They've been kept and digitised thoroughly.
Tonight, on The Full Story, we revisit ANZAC Day 2022.
Very difficult, just by reading the graves sometimes, to understand the real stories that are there. Not to be flippant, what I try to do is bring them alive for you.
And share with you some of the stories of our own fallen diggers. How come no one knows this?
Yes. Well, that's motivation for me, isn't it? More people should know about this.
Plus, why this gravesite deserves to be restored.
As an identifiable battle, it is a very important part of Warrnambool's history.
The Full Story on Fitzmedia Live. Hello and welcome to the program. There is a turn of phrase that is often used in the military, and that is never leave a man behind. It sums up so much about our ANZAC spirit, and while in World War I it wasn't always possible to bring the fallen home, it was possible to recount their stories. Since 2004, Doug Heazlewood has made it a key focus to research our returned World War I veterans, reading up on their service and sharing their story as part of a cemetery walk each ANZAC Day. The first year he led a walk, roughly 8 people turned up. Last year, in 2022, there was almost 100. I was one of those 100 locals who decided to head along last year, and some of the stories from that day have stayed with me since. I also documented the walk. Doug's knowledge and stories needed to be preserved, and tonight I will share with you some of those stories. Sadly, Doug won't be conducting a cemetery walk this ANZAC Day, but he hopes he can one day pass the baton on to someone else. The other part to Doug's passion is overseeing the restoration of the family memorial of Major Thomas Redford, a Warrnambool man who was depicted in the movie Gallipoli. Something that isn't commonly known is while in the film, the men of the 8th Light Horse Regiment are portrayed to be from Western Australia. Well, this isn't the case. The men depicted in the film were actually from the Western Districts of Victoria, and it was Warrnambool's Major Thomas Redford who led them into the battle at the Neck. Doug would like to see his family memorial rebuilt, not just to honour Thomas Redford, but also the other men from the Warrnambool District who, we know, were part of that battle at the Neck. The challenge is making sure a man's name isn't left off the memorial, thus never leaving a man behind. Inside the Warrnambool Cemetery lay the bodies of up to 300 World War I veterans. Men and women who served, returned, and later died after resuming their lives in the district.
There's about 47, I think, graves where there's a family grave that mentions one of their number, a son usually, on the parent's grave, remembered having died at Gallipoli in 1915 or in France in 1916.
And is in fact buried overseas.
Yes.
Every ANZAC Day since 2004, Doug Heazlewood has done something phenomenal. Researched the service history of almost all of our World War I veterans, doing something they never could or ever wanted to, telling their stories to locals who have chosen to listen.
Anyone could walk at the cemetery and look at the writing on the graves and assume whatever they need to about the person who is buried in there. Very difficult, just by reading the grave sometimes to understand the real stories that are there, and what, again, not to be flippant, what I try to do is bring them alive for you. A little over 20 years ago, I read a story of some veterans of World War I who, not long after the war, after they'd returned, they came from Perth, they decided that one of the ways they would observe ANZAC Day was by going out to visit the graves of fellas who had come home with them and who had since died. So they took a little walk around the cemetery, actively remembering what those guys were like. And I thought that would be a good addition to what we had been doing in Warrnambool on ANZAC Day.
What started as a gathering of 9 people in 2004 grew to up to 100 last year. But the walk on ANZAC Day is the tip of the iceberg and the result of many months of research. What goes into putting it together?
Well, first of all, you need to do as much as you can to research the number of people who are buried in the cemetery, who have obviously returned from World War I, lived out the rest of their lives and are buried there. That's at one level fairly easy. You've got to be prepared to put the time in to walk around and visit every grave in the cemetery, noting down the people who acknowledge their war service. But you would be very surprised at the number of people who don't on the graves that they occupy at the end of their lives, particularly in the 1970s. If a World War I veteran died in the 1970s, most often has not mentioned his military service on the grave. And if you remember the time yourself, ANZAC Day was at a fairly low ebb of attendance then. It wasn't a very popular subject, war, after Vietnam was over.
Cast your mind back a little bit to when you first started looking around the Warrnambool Cemetery. How many kilometres do you think you've done around here?
Fitz, it'd be too difficult to calculate anything like a correct answer, but here's a measure that might help you understand it. A few years ago, I was wanting to check that I hadn't missed much out here, so I brought 3 of my grandchildren with me. They've all got younger eyes than mine, and I told them that it would be an easy job. We was going to be downhill all the way. We started in the corner up there, and we went down the first row. Then we walked up the second row. Then we walked down the third row, and all the way down here to row 37, which is at the bottom. And we visited every grave and read every inscription and looked generally at the grave to see if we could say whether that was a war veteran or not. The kids didn't quite know what to expect, but they did at the end. And in fact, they learned a lot. They could in the end tell me the difference between a World War I and a World War II veteran's grave.
Which is amazing for kids. But if you put it in that perspective, it's a pretty big cemetery. So you'd be back to Melbourne and Warrnambool a few times if you put all the kilometres together.
Well, probably.
Doug's first attempt at delving into the war history of the veteran was a soldier by the name of William Bill Anderson. Bill worked with Doug at the Warrnambool City Council. Bill never spoke of his war history, but Doug knew he had some.
Was awarded a military medal for a conspicuous act of bravery, and a month later was awarded another one. Northeast of Corby, on the night of the 7th and 8th of July, he attacked and captured 5 Germans during his patrolling. The good work done by him kept the enemy machine gun fire down and enabled the position to be consolidated with very few casualties. The next is a month later, on the morning of the 8th of August 1918, which was a day that later Ludendorff, the German Chief of Staff, called a black day for the German army. Corporal Anderson was acting as a company scout. The information gained by him led to the capture of 3 field guns and numerous prisoners from the woods above mentioned. This NCO carried out his reconnaissance under heavy fire, utterly regardless of his personal safety. His actions throughout the operation were of the highest order, and he set a fine example to the other men around him. So that was Bill Anderson, who I knew as that quiet elderly man who used to sweep the town hall floors. The World War I soldiers' files are very revealing. They've been kept and digitised thoroughly. The one thing I remember reading about Bill's file, he was rejected on the first occasion he tried to enlist because he had insufficient teeth.
Wow.
So, but he got in next year, so he must have got some extra teeth from somewhere.
Doug's discovery about who he knew to be a humble old man sparked a thirst for finding more stories. Bill Anderson's grave is like many here in the Warrnambool Cemetery. It's easy to walk past and not know anything about what they did for their country. The more Doug looked, the more interesting the stories became, and continue to become to this day.
The more I looked, the more interesting the stories were going to get, and they have done. I've found things. I found something new and interesting and attractive to the mind for each year that I've been doing them.
Do you try and do that every year?
I do.
Yeah. New people, new stories.
Oh yeah, you know, I've even included a fellow in the cemetery walk because he didn't do anything in particular. But I would have to say that I'm not the only researcher, and I would have to take the trouble to pay a tribute to my friend Ray Welsford, who's recently retired as the president of the Warrnambool Family History Group after many years of steering it along, and he is a powerfully good researcher. Give him a name and ask him to see what he can find out about their local doings, and he comes up with some absolute gems.
One of the most amazing things that Doug brings to the cemetery walks is being able to shed light on a soldier's service that not even their families were aware of. Ralph Britton was a Naranda soldier who fought in the Battle of Lone Pine, one of the most bloodiest of the First World War. On Doug's first walk in 2004, all 13 of Ralph Britton's children attended to hear Doug tell their dad's story.
Again, I'd just point out, if you look at the date of his death, it's 1971, and again, this doesn't mention his war service at all. He was an original ANZAC. He landed on the first day at Gallipoli. He started off in the 14th Battalion, which was a locally recruited battalion from around Warrnambool, and in particular the 14th Battalion was the battalion that bore the brunt of the fighting at Lone Pine. The Turks had dug themselves in very strongly and had put overhead cover over their trenches and were very secure inside the trenches. And in particular, the troops from around here had to attack those fortifications and get in and get underground into the German trenches and fight their way along it. It was a battle not so much of taking aim and firing and using your rifle on the enemy, but using your bayonet and some using your bare hand. He was decorated twice. He was first of all mentioned in dispatches. Lieutenant Britton was conspicuous by his great devotion to duty. Lieutenant Britton maintained an ample and constant supply of ammunition, bombs, water and food to the front line. Later he was awarded the Military Cross. On the 18th and 19th of September 1918, during the night he with his platoon captured a strongly held position, killing about 20 of the enemy and taking over 100 prisoners with many machine guns.
If it wasn't for Doug's research, it's almost guaranteed that no one would ever have known a locally based soldier was involved in one of the most bloodiest battles of the First World War. And were they surprised, as his family, as to the information you had about their father?
Oh, well, I could tell them things that they didn't know because he wouldn't have told them. And they could tell me things about him, of course. He was badly affected by the war. After the war, the family was quite happy to acknowledge that he was. They had a tough time out of it too. And it was just a matter of, in the 1970s, it wasn't popular.
Yeah.
To
Talk about your war history.
yes, and to dwell on people's existence as war veterans.
A smart blend is a way to feed animals without the farmers having to use mixer wagons, use extra labour. It gets its ingredients that suits the type of animals that we're making it for.
We've been using the Ridley Smart Blends for 8 years. We use front end loader, tractor forks and bucket to feed both bales and in bulk. For the simple reason is it's one package, it's all in there, just make it so easy.
If you've been injured, make the call. Find out if you have a claim. Madden's Lawyers is the region's most experienced injury compensation firm. Madden's Lawyers. Make the call.
B&B Furniture Plus is here to help you make your life more comfortable. Specialising in mobility and movement, B&B Furniture Plus's new Warrnambool showroom showcases a huge range of healthcare equipment. B&B Furniture Plus prides itself on having a more personalised approach and can even come to you. With flexible payment options, B&B Furniture Plus can customise anything to suit your specific needs. B&B Furniture Plus. New showroom open now. Raglan Parade, Warrnambool.
You run a busy office and your office team work diligently to assure that your business is successful. IT support is crucial to this, allowing your business to run smoothly. Get on the front foot with IT. Book a systems health check now with eResources.
When you think of the future of your business, what is it that you hope for? Ways to grow? Ways to be more self-reliant? And always be one step ahead? Are you looking for a partner with solutions to complex business problems? Well, no matter your goal, with Nutrient Ag Solutions, we'll help you go further.
Lying beneath the Warrnambool Cemetery are many of our World War I veterans. For those who never made it back, their names are etched in the stone of family memorials. One thing our soldiers who made it home have in common with those who did not is their stories would virtually be unknown if it wasn't for people like Doug Heazlewood.
I have other stories to tell you on the way around. Some that you won't have heard anything about before, hopefully most. I've uncovered something about the people in the graves, which will be interesting to you all.
I feel so fortunate that I went on last year's one because I know they exist, and now I'm in a position to be able to tell the world that these amazing stories exist here in our own area. You sum it up so well on these walks where if you can read a grave, you can see who's buried there, but you don't know the stories that are associated with them. When you started to uncover some of these stories, what went through your mind?
The more I looked, the more interesting the stories were going to get. They were a bit picky at the start of the war, but there are lots of examples like that. One fella who's buried in this, who is not buried in the cemetery, was killed overseas, but his name's on his family graves, and he's only 5'4" tall. And he was told by the recruiting officer that he was not tall enough. You should go home and do a bit of growing, boy, and then you might be big enough. Well, he was very disgusted with that, but nevertheless he got on with his job, and he went back the next year, which is 1916, after the big casualty lists from the Somme came out. And all of a sudden, 5'4" was tall enough, and in he got. He's a remarkable fellow. He was the son of a Chinese market gardener.
Doug's stories about our diggers on the cemetery walk are delivered with a mix of humour, sadness and pride. One story that stayed with me from 12 months ago is the story of Private William Ryan. It's both amazed and embarrassed me at the same time. It's amazed me because Private Ryan was a man of brute mental strength, and what he did in World War I is similar to what was depicted in a 2019 film, 1917. Embarrassed because I only found out about his story 12 months ago.
The citation for a Distinguished Conduct Medal for an ordinary soldier, that's the next level below a VC. The citation for the fellow in that grave reads, "We're carrying a message under very heavy machine gun fire to an outlying position. He had one eye shot out and was otherwise severely wounded. Nevertheless, he kept on with indomitable endurance until he reached the post and delivered clearly and correctly the verbal message with which he was charged. He refused to be assisted to return, as he did not wish to weaken the post at a critical time, but made his way back alone. His behaviour was a fine example of unflinching courage, and on many occasions during a period of severe strain, his conduct has been most inspiring to those about him." So here's a fella who's been given a message, told to go out and deliver it to the troops across no man's land. He's done that, on his way, eye shot out and wounded badly, and he still got there and still told them in clear what the message was. And when the captain at the outpost said, "Look, you're badly wounded, old fella. I'm worried for you. I'm going to give you a couple of escorts to take you back to base where you can get your wounds attended." And he said, "No, sir, I won't. If I take people away from this post, it'll make it weaker and everybody else here is in danger. So I don't need that. I'll go back by myself."
How come no one knows this?
Yes. Well, that's motivation for me, isn't it? More people should know about this. And I think when I went and found his grave and went away to find out what he'd done, I wrote up my little story about him. Then I went back out to his grave and sat there for a little while. Had a bit of a yarn to him, I think.
And just said, well done.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel that moment when you got to acknowledge his service like that?
That's one of the things that motivates me to keep on turning up and bringing people alive.
This story of William Ryan stayed with me from that day on, and I have almost committed it to memory. What brought it home for me was listening to Doug deliver William's story was someone who lived close by to William when he returned from the war. He spoke after Doug finished his story, and what he said sums up so many of us, and that he had no idea about what William did during the war.
Billy Ryan certainly did live on his own. He lived in what we called a hut, way back from the main road. The only time we used to see him much was he never had a car or a tractor. He had a horse and cart, and for a pony and sort of tinker, and he had a couple of blocks further around behind our farm, and we would see him go along the road. And so even like right through the 1960s, as I was growing up out there, we'd see Billy Ryan, and a small man, and but very, very private. And then later on, actually later the late 60s, myself and a couple of neighbours, we carted his hay in for him, but the neighbours did keep an eye on him, and but I had no idea until just recently that he had won that award.
Yeah.
And certainly very aware of his disfiguration, and very proud to know that he was a neighbour.
This person got back from the war, survived, came back, and lived in an old shed for many, many years. people on the walk that knew of this person didn't realise that that is the reason he lived the way he did.
And he didn't really want to talk about it. I don't think. I think that shows a bit further strength of character. Really, he didn't want to be garnering pity from anybody because of what had happened to him or anything like that. He wanted to get on with the way he wanted to live, run his little farm, and look after his animals, and didn't have to rely on anybody else to keep him in good physical and mental shape. So there's no great legend of what he did.
His story was just one of the gems Doug was able to uncover by research after locating his grave. Other stories were inspired by knowing the person, people like Ike Primmer.
Ike was 65 when I met him in 1960, so Ike Primmer used to take me out all around the council properties, and I would have the box under my arm with their pay packets in it. He had learned to drive a car, not one of these newfangled utes with the gear stick up on the steering wheel. He would rev the engine, let the clutch out slowly, and if the ute went backwards and we meant to go forwards, he knew he could pull it straight down and take off in the right direction. And apart from the driving, nothing worried me at all. But I knew nothing about what I'm about to tell you. He was awarded the Military Medal on the 9th of August 1918 in the final offensive against the Germans. During the advance, his company came under extremely heavy machine gun fire at close range, in the open, and was held up. He's worked his way forward to within 100 yards of the enemy position, and there he engaged their machine gun post. So he stood up and fired at them, letting them fire at him. He put the two guns out of action and captured both teams, taking in all 8 prisoners. The company was then enabled to resume its advance on the village with little opposition and finally reached its objective with very few further losses. So I used to think Ike was a bit of an old duffer, you know. Nice guy, but a bit of a duffer. And I've realised that he's done something. I'm surprised he only was awarded a military medal, actually. What was in there would have got other people at other times a DCM or even a VC. Victoria Cross in the long run, yes. And so every time I go there and talk about his grave, I've got to look up and hope Ike is there listening, so he can know that I'm not such a disrespectful little beggar anymore. I've got much more respect for him. So if you can hear me, Ike, I didn't mean all those bad thoughts I had about your driving. You were pretty good.
At last, there's a more gentle alternative to fire cremation. Resting Water's eco-friendly pet cremation is Victoria's only water cremation facility. A solution of water and mineral salts mimic the natural process that returns your pet's body to nature. Water cremation uses 90% less energy with zero harmful emissions, making it more affordable. Resting Waters, helping your pet leave a lasting imprint on your heart without the carbon footprint.
The way we do business has changed. We have new demands on telecommunications. We need increased functionality, integration into video platforms, and to work from anywhere. We have to turbocharge efficiency and lower our costs and plan for future growth. We need access to the cloud as it's the most cost-effective way forward. eResources The One, offering us complete phone integration.
Dealing with Ridley, it's been very important that we have a consistent feed source going into the cows every day. Last financial year, the cows did 412,000 kilos of milk solids, just over 5 million litres.
These are high production herd, and our requirements, macro, micro and vitamins and buffers
have got to be spot on.
Dealing with Ridley, they're very prompt with their orders and they haven't let us down.
When seeking the help of legal professionals, consult your local team who care for locals. Bellman Legal Vic provides a wide range of legal services, including wills and estate planning, criminal law, family law and divorce, civil and commercial litigation. Lawyers Adam Bellman and Kiernan Celestina, practice manager Ann Johnson and their support team are available to support existing and new clients. Bellman Legal Vic, 198 Timor Street, Warrnambool, and find them online at bellmanlegal.com.au.
For most people, the idea of going on a cemetery walk may sound macabre. But when it comes to learning about our war history, it's the perfect link to our ANZACs. I know the RSL at the moment is really big on finding new volunteers, younger people, to help preserve our war history.
World War I was the biggest event after Federation in almost every Australian city or town. And it's a community desire to give thanks and make remembrance of them. And in a good community, they need people like the RSL to make sure that the story lives and the story keeps meaning something.
It's also a way for locals to earn a new appreciation of the dangers all soldiers face and how the most simplest of things could end their lives.
This is a grave of a Vietnam veteran. Bill Carroll was a member of the 1st Battalion, a rifleman in the 1st Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment, which was the 1st Battalion deployed to Vietnam in 1965. He was the first Australian combat casualty of the Vietnam War. And that's where his body is buried, and that is an official Department of Veterans Affairs granted monument on a veteran's grave. They went out for a fairly simple, straightforward operation. When they got back to the camp, it was announced that there were cool drinks available in the kitchen. So people started to jump off the trucks. Bill Carroll jumped off a truck, a grenade on his webbing, snagged on a bolt on the tray of the truck, pulled the pin out, and the grenade went off right beside him. So he was just instantly killed. He and several other people. I remember when Bill was killed, because I was still a cadet at Duntroon then. I saw one other cadet really upset when he heard the news of Billy being killed. Was information given out on a parade, and I realised he was one of the kids who used to come in from Dennington. As I have said at times, what I try and do for the people coming to the cemetery walk, I like to bring these people alive. And I could do that with Bill because I knew him and I could talk about him personally.
An important note to make when speaking about our local ANZACs is that not all of them were there to fight. Being decorated as a soldier was a sign of bravery, and some of the most brave didn't hold guns. They held stretchers. They were there to rescue the wounded and, as a result, were often badly wounded themselves. And one of those men was Corporal John Hempel.
He was awarded the military medal on the first occasion at Pozieres. Pozieres was the place where Bean, the historian, said there is more Australian blood in the soil of Pozieres than there is in any other place in the world. Private Hempel showed conspicuous bravery throughout our stay in the trenches as a stretcher bearer with Private Trinder from C Company. He continuously carried wounded through heavy barrages of fire 75 yards from the enemy, where for 50 yards he was fully exposed to the enemy's fire. When Private Trinder was wounded, Private Hempel continued to work by himself, bandaging wounded in no man's land and carrying them single-handed back to safety.
Private Hempel went on to receive a bar, a second award for the same decoration. Sadly, not all acts of heroism resulted in medals. Another local stretcher bearer was recommended for a military medal along with 7 other stretcher bearers during what is described as the bloodthirstiest campaign in 1916 in Fromelles. 5,000 casualties occurred in one night, but George Sell became a victim of consequence of an exclusionist policy.
From the 24th to the 27th of July 1916, all roads and tracks leading to and from the firing line were subjected to a terrific bombardment. These men never wavered, but worked unceasingly, getting the wounded to the dressing station, and as there were no communication trenches, all their work was done in the open, under a hellish fire. The policy was that a commissioned officer had to witness the events for there to be an award made. And there weren't any commissioned officers alive, and so the award was refused.
Thankfully, George Sell was eventually decorated 12 months later. He was awarded the military medal for his role as a stretcher bearer during a battle at Bullecourt. He was in charge of stretcher bearers, and for 48 hours, he entered the most dangerous zones under fierce barrages of fire to bring out wounded men. Out of all of the veterans you've researched, it's probably going to be like asking to pick your favourite child. But what story fascinates you the most out of all of the stories?
Well, we'll see them all. The Redford grave, the Bill Ryan grave. I like to go to Ike Primmer's. He was a fellow who I knew. There's a grave up here of a fellow called Gus Officer, who played for Essendon in the VFL. He played in their inaugural VFL Grand Final win in 1897, and he was in the local army reserve in the artillery, and he put up his hand and said, "I want to go to the war, I want to enlist." And he was 40, and they wouldn't push his nomination. So he said, all right, to hell with that. And he took himself to Britain. He purchased a commission in the artillery, which you could do in those days. And he served through World War I, and he was awarded a military cross, a mention in dispatches twice. He has an honourable record, and there's quite a story.
Walking through the cemetery with Doug, it's clear to see the passion he has for his field. The challenge, like many with an ageing population, is to find someone willing to take on this work. His dedication to sharing the stories of our fallen is limitless, and his work tireless. Where do you start? Like, could there be a bit of a process involved?
The answer is, as long as it takes, limited by as long as you've got. And it's not a silly answer, that's what we do. For some people, it falls into your hands, and you can quickly gather it, marshal it, and even make sense of it. For other people, you have to put it aside and wait a year or two until you come to stumble across the name again and think, I ought to do a bit more about that.
Bell's Garden Centre has been serving the Southwest for 60 years. People choose Bell's because you can't buy experience, and Bell's has plenty. Bell's has a huge range of brands like Ferris, Cub Cadet, Ariens, Victor and Stiga. Bell's servicing department is respected, experienced and the best in the business. Landscaping needs, ornaments and accessories can all be found at Bell's. Bell's also has the largest range of sand and soil products in the Southwest, with delivery available. Bell's Garden Centre, new ownership, same familiar faces.
Bell's Garden Centre has the largest range of sand and soil products in the southwest. People choose Bell's because you can't buy experience, and Bell's has plenty. With bulk product delivery available across the southwest, for your next project, it's gotta be Bell's.
B&B Furniture Plus is here to help you make your life more comfortable. Specialising in mobility and movement, B&B Furniture Plus's new Warrnambool showroom showcases a huge range of healthcare equipment. B&B Furniture Plus prides itself on having a more personalised approach and can even come to you. With flexible payment options, B&B Furniture Plus can customise anything to suit your specific needs. B&B Furniture Plus, new showroom open now. Raglan Parade, Warrnambool.
George Taylor Stores. 3 stores and astonishing range of products. Clothing, accessories, beanies, gloves, hats and belts. Brands like Bisley, Yakka and Ridgeline. Plus the largest range of boots and gumboots in the region. George Taylor Stores.
At last, there's a more gentle alternative to fire cremation. Resting Water's eco-friendly pet cremation is Victoria's only water cremation facility. A solution of water and mineral salts mimic the natural process that returns your pet's body to nature. Water cremation uses 90% less energy with 0 harmful emissions, making it more affordable. Resting Waters, helping your pet leave a lasting imprint on your heart without the carbon footprint.
For the last 20 years, Doug Heazlewood has conducted cemetery walks telling the stories of our fallen ANZACs. Sadly this year, due to health reasons, this important ANZAC Day commemoration isn't going ahead. It's not happening for the first time for many years. I think COVID probably might not have happened, but that'd be hard for you.
Oh yes, I feel a bit disappointed, and I'm not feeling I could do it justice in the short time I have between now and ANZAC Day.
It's hoped the younger generation will see the importance of telling the stories of our veterans, and with over 3,000 soldiers laying at rest in Warrnambool Cemetery, there is plenty of work left to be done.
I'd like to see it continue. I'd like to find, in fact I've been actively looking over a few years for somebody who might step up and say, look, can I learn from you and be able to do this for other people when you can't?
As passionate as Doug is about his cemetery walks, there is one personal objective he really wants to achieve.
There are still many people who will remember having seen the film Gallipoli. There is this dramatic final scene in the film where the Australians have to attack the Turkish line. The first wave of the assault is mown down, and there's a memorable picture of a fellow known in the film as Major Barton looking at his watch and in a quandary because the guns have stopped in his mind and there's a gap and he knows that could be critical.
It's a scene we have all seen, but there is one misconception that our history classes never told us.
The true story is that those soldiers were not all from Western Australia at all. The first 2 waves at this small battlefield called the Neck were soldiers who were enlisted into the 8th Light Horse Regiment around the Western District. 3 squadrons, A, B and C Squadron of the 8th Light Horse, centred on Warrnambool, are the troops who did those first 2 waves in the attack.
And who are represented in the film.
They are.
In Peter Weir's 1985 blockbuster, the man holding the watch is known as Major Barton. In reality, that man in charge of the Neck was Major Thomas Redford from Warrnambool, Victoria.
He was quite a sort of a prominent citizen around town. In the part-time military, maybe 10 years in the militia before the war, he put his hand up to go with the Light Horse very, very, very early, and they all went off to Gallipoli around April, May.
Major Thomas Redford was also a prominent member of the Warrnambool Rowing Club. As history already tells us, members of the Warrnambool Rowing Club volunteered to join the AIF within the first couple of months of the outbreak of World War I. After years of research and looking into Major Redford's file, Doug has no doubt that Thomas was the main reason those men volunteered so quickly.
There's a monument on the other side of the road down there. The 61 males who were members of the Warrnambool Rowing Club when war was declared, every one of whom went along to enlist in the AIF, and it has to be very largely under the influence of Thomas Redford.
And do you think a lot of those men were those same men in the 8th Light Horse that went over the trench under his command?
Some were. They had to get in wherever there was a vacancy that early. That early in the war, the army was still being a little bit picky and telling people like Bill Anderson that he didn't have enough teeth, and telling old Private Artso that he wasn't tall enough. Whereas a little later in the war, all those physical limitations disappeared. They were no longer required.
Thomas Redford is one of those soldiers you mentioned that is buried in France or buried in Turkey, but yet his name remains on the family gravestone here. But unfortunately, that gravestone has fell into some really bad disrepair.
It has, and it's been a sort of a personal objective of mine to try and generate a project to restore that grave and restore the memory of all those fellas who fought at the neck and who came from Warrnambool as something we know that Warrnambool citizens did.
The fact that the Thomas Redford Family Memorial is in such desperate need of repair is just one thing that Doug is hoping to achieve. The other is so much more. The fact that Thomas and the rest of the 8th Light Horse Regiment were boys from the Warrnambool district brings so much more into consideration. Not only does Doug want to repair this memorial for the Redford family, he also wants to create a place where we as locals can come to and reflect, knowing that boys from our region were the first to lose their lives in the Battle of the Neck.
I tried quite hard twice to get the project off the ground. About 5 or 6 years ago, I got started on it. Then I became ill for a while and had to sort of drop everything for a while. I started it again last year and got some measurable distance further down the track, but I'm finding it very hard to concentrate and to muster the sort of resources that I need, the personal resources that I need to drive a project like that.
The resources Doug needs are more than masonry and money. The main concern he has is making sure he includes all the names of those Warrnambool and district soldiers who lost their lives at the Neck.
As an identifiable battle, it is a very important part of Warrnambool's history to understand that such a heroic but futile charge was all done by young fellas from Warrnambool. The painstaking effort that you have to take to make sure that you don't miss anybody's name. You don't leave off a name that should be on a memorial.
No one gets left behind.
That is very important.